Greetings and salutations to all you folks out there. Hope you're having an awesome hump day. This week has been kind of a weird one for me. I hope it's been a good one for you. Got several little topics that I want to hit on as my phone is going off. I want to talk about New Year's resolutions. I want to talk about dietary habits very briefly, which I hope I won't ramble on too long about. I want to talk about ladder, and I want to kind of talk about FAF in general, because some people have been asking my thoughts on some things going on. This may run a little bit longer than usual, but stick with me because there is more FAF stuff toward the end. But first off, we are now almost exactly 2 weeks into the new year. It's basically been 14 days at this point. We've just got a couple more to go. And I'm curious to know how you guys are doing on your New Year's resolution. This is pretty much the point where most people have let them slip, started to, I'm going to fudge this thing in over there, and maybe just completely drop them, giving up on them, who knows. But I am actually still plugging away. I've got everything under control, so to speak. I've had no sodas, no highly caffeinated beverages, have had a couple of glasses of sweet tea that had some caffeine in them, but not like, Mountain Dew level stuff. I've had no candy, which is a weird side effect. Like, since I'm no longer stopping at gas stations or pulling into stores to get snacks and do stuff like that, it has kind of eliminated candy from my diet, which is something that I wasn't completely expecting. Like, I was going to try to not eat as much candy or that sugary stuff, but it just kind of came as a side effect, which is good. It really is good. So all of that is still intact, and there's an interesting side effect that I've noticed. I feel way more energetic. Like I used to feel foggy. I wasn't completely attentive all the time. I was kind of falling asleep here and there. I was not able to think clearly, even when I was supposed to be mentally alert, because I've had my sleeping schedule adjusted for about 3 months now. So I've been getting plenty of sleep at night. I'm not sleepy lethargic, just lethargic. And since I have come off of caffeine and sugar, this has only been 2 weeks in, like, I feel 500% better, which is you can feel 500% better because you're taking a quantity of how you feel and then multiplying it. So you could have 500%. Anyway, totally random rabbit trail there. This is like, it ticks me off when people say give 110% because it's physically impossible to give 110%. It just is. But yeah, I think that's feasible. Anyway, so it's definitely something that I can recommend because apparently having less caffeine makes you more alert. I don't know. Maybe it was affecting my sleep, like I was getting enough sleep, but I wasn't falling into deep sleep. I don't know. I don't know what it was, but I do feel better, and that's the important thing. I feel fantastic, and it is good, because it's been a long time, honestly. Anyway, so that's the thing. And if you guys have any observations on your own New Year's resolutions, I'd love to hear about those. One interesting thing that has come out of this, and my wife and I have kind of been throwing articles back and forth on dietary habits, trying to figure out just kind of a game plan. We're trying to not eat out, and we're trying to cook at home more and make better use of our budgets and try to be a little healthier. And one of the things that we've kind of latched onto, which is one of those areas, it brings up an entire discussion on the scientific community at large, because once you have a consensus on something like your food pyramid, once there's a consensus, not a lot of money goes to studying things that fall outside of the main point of view. Generally, you have more and more funding going towards things that are definitely going to pan out or that line up with how we think it already is. And one of the problems that, well, let me backtrack. It's not one of the problems. The obesity rate has gone through the roof, and I am actually in that category now. And we've been reading a couple of articles recently, some of them by nutritionists. And when I say nutritionists, not the kind that's in GNC selling you supplements, like an actual, with a degree, nutritionist. And a couple of doctors here and there, they're starting to question the way that the whole food table is set up, and saying that maybe carbs are not the best thing to be filling the bottom of the dietary table with. Because basically we're desensitizing ourselves to insulin. You know, the body regulates blood sugar with insulin, which it's interesting how it all ties together, because there's also a huge rise in diabetes. And what some people are starting to suggest is that overeating is a byproduct of being overweight and not vice versa. It may not actually be an addiction to food or an addiction to the feeling of eating. It may be that your body is crashing because there's not enough sugar in your blood, because you're not regulating it properly, because you're not making the correct amount of insulin. And so it triggers your brain like crazy, because your body is thinking that it's starving to death when it actually isn't. And that triggers the uncontrollable eating impulse, which I can deny myself food. I'm not in that category. I kind of got this way from just drinking too much soda and that kind of thing. But anyway, so the thinking is that if you lower the amount of simple carbs and simple sugar, and I say that meaning like processed stuff, things that immediately enter your bloodstream on digestion, since our body is flooded with that all of the time, it's not able, we're desensitized to the insulin process, and then we're not able to correctly start drawing on stored fat instead of getting the impulse to eat more. So I don't know. It's a weird area of study, but I think it can't hurt, because eliminating simple carbohydrates and simple sugars eliminates pretty much all junk food, and it eliminates a lot of things that are definitely fattening. So we're not going to be contributing to science. We're not going on some kind of weird, vegan blitzkrieg, and we're trying to convert everyone along the way. But we're just going to try to kind of start notching down the amount of sugar and carbs that we're eating, and replacing that with fruits, vegetables, and meat, basically, for protein, different things that we can eat that way. So it's kind of an interesting thing. This is, okay, another rabbit trail. This is turning out to be way longer than I expected to spend on dietary stuff, but I have a lot of thoughts that kind of just fly around every which way, and I love just spilling. Basically, this is the thing that I've always hated about the gluten-free crowd, because yes, there are people who have, is it Crohn's disease? Which one is it, where if you eat wheat protein, basically your body just ejects itself? Anyway, you can have disorders like that. You can have legitimate allergies and sensitivities, like you can have allergies to anything else. But the whole gluten craze, where everybody's looking for gluten-free and all that kind of stuff, I don't think it's, well, it's not. Gluten is not the thing that is more healthy. I think people are being like me, where they're eating all the wrong stuff. They feel like crap all the time. They say, I'm going to go gluten-free. And when you go gluten-free, you eliminate Little Debbie, you eliminate like 99.9% of snack food, which leaves you with fruits and vegetables to snack on. It eliminates all kinds of pasta and bread and all of this fattening stuff. So your entire diet does a complete and total 180. You're affecting all corners of your life. Of course you're going to feel better. And then people say, it's because I'm not eating gluten anymore. And it's not. So anyway, this whole thing is completely muddled, and there's 27,000 different trains of thoughts for dietary stuff, and we're never going to figure it all out. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm doing it. And I'm kind of interested by the topic, and we'll see where it goes from here. Anyway, on to FAF stuff. So I've been playing a lot of ladder recently. I mean, a lot of ladder. And it's because, okay, maybe not that much. Take it down a notch, Brink. It's gotten to the point where, yes, I'm playing once a week for the stream, and then I'm actually jumping into lobbies sometimes. And I look at the FAF client, I'm looking at all the games there, and I'm like, you know what? None of these really look interesting to play. And there's that tempting ladder button in the corner. I'm going to click that. And so I do. And it's actually fun. It's challenging. It's pitting yourself against another player with nobody else to back you up. Nobody to save your butt if you do everything wrong. And it's just a really cool experience. Something that's brought in a little fresh flavor to the game after all of these years. And I would highly encourage anybody to go try it out because it will force you to become a better player. But as I'm assuming all of you that are watching this have seen, because pretty much only the dedicated viewers watch these, you saw the ladder stream that I did. And basically I won 2 games, one of them by sheer force of will and staying in the game longer than I probably should have, and the other person failing slightly harder than I did. So it's just this war of attrition for 25 minutes with both of us destroying each other, and I happened to destroy him just a little bit harder. And then the other game, I lost all of my map control. I was in this little bitty tiny corner of the map, and I had nothing left, no economy, and I just mercied the other guy. Total cheese, a kill that I never should have gotten, and I won it because he won, but his commander died. So, if that makes sense. Anyway, I made a comment in Aeolus about, oh, that moment when you do literally everything wrong and you win anyway and you don't understand. And Blackheart, don't believe everything Blackheart says. Don't believe most of what Blackheart says. Definitely not in the context of Aeolus. And he's like, so what? Like, well, that's weird because you should have a reason that you won and you should be able to explain it clearly. And you should not feel so pressed when you're in game. Like, I'm going to die. What do I do now? And he's like, that's normal. That's ladder. Like, really? And I got to thinking about it, and he's probably right because, granted, I was not on top of my game yesterday when I was playing those, but if you're stretching your limits, if you're playing against your actual peers in the game, that means that your skill level is going to be very, very, very close. And it may not necessarily be who plays better. It may be who makes fewer mistakes, especially when you're talking about the higher ranking players where they're doing everything right, but the entire game turns into an exercise in punishing the other person for any and all mistakes that they make. And it's a really interesting place to be in, and it should perpetuate until you hit the top and you can't get any better. Because every time you win by the skin of your teeth, your rank goes up just a little bit. And the pool of players that you can play with goes up just a little bit. And so the next time that you win, you'll win by the skinnier of your teeth. And it just kind of goes on that way, up and up and up and up and up and up. And when you're playing at the very limit of your ability, which in my case is my ability to focus, because I lose focus when I'm doing stuff like this, especially on bigger maps. I can't. It's hard to concentrate on everything at once and do everything that you're supposed to be doing. And it's a lot of actions per minute involved. Even for the laziest of players or the most efficient of players, there's a lot of clicking to do. And especially when I'm streaming and trying to talk to, it's like playing with 75% of your brain, not 100%. And anyway, it's just a weird stretching experience. Don't take that out of context. And it's really good. It's really, really good. Kind of fun too. I do want to beat my head against a wall sometimes when something incredibly frustrating happens, but it is good. And then on to the FAF experience in general. I've had a couple of questions raised to me very, very recently. I know one of the people who asked this. I'm not sure of the names of the other two. I'm just going to answer these questions and not give anybody's names. But the one question that comes up is, why is it taking so long to do patches? And by that meaning, why is A and B and C broken, and what are we going to do about it? And to that, I would say, check out the FAF podcast. It is linked in the forum. I could probably link it in this video. I will try to find it. If I don't get it posted, you can definitely find it by searching on SoundCloud or going to the forum. It's just the FAF podcast. But the gist of it is, if you're talking about a balance patch, there's only a couple of people that are actively working on the balance patch. Their testing group is a little bit too small to be comfortable. And a lot of the changes that they're trying to work with cascade. So, like, if you're trying to adjust the strap bomber, that means that you have to adjust directly SAMs, ASF, the effect of the strap bombers on Navy. Because if you make air too strong, then Navy doesn't stand a chance. And if you make air too weak, then there is no counter to Navy, which also cascades into other areas of the game. And then you're talking about your power income level, you're talking about the build time of said unit, and it's never simple. You can't push a little change. And so they make little tweaks here and there over time, and they test and they test and they test and they test and they test, and it takes a couple of months to even get a reasonably close facsimile of a balance change. And then it has to go to beta, and they bug test it, because anytime you're changing things about units, it will inevitably create bugs. And yeah, it's a long, extended process that it needs a lot of thought, and it needs a lot of testing. So if you're worried about how long it's taking to do balance tests, and you're also worried about all of the bugs that happen immediately after balance tests, my answer to you would be volunteer for testing, and whenever you're playing in team games, click the beta FAF button, not the FAF button, and then do bug reports if you run into anything or if you have thoughts. There's a whole forum for that to discuss balance changes. Anybody's free to give suggestions, and Zoc reads it all the time. So your voice will be heard. You may be shouted down by other members of the community, but your voice will be heard. So that's what I would say on that regard. On the client side, bugs, issues, things happening on the client side, there are probably one single handful of people that are working on the client in their free time. So this is something where if there were more people working on it, it would probably go a little bit quicker. And then again, with the bug testing and the errors and everything else stacking up, it just takes time, and there's not enough people to work on it. It is a community project. So sometimes it gets a little frustrating for the developers when you have a community of, 200 or 300 super active chat members, and then a player base of several thousand that are in and out all the time. And you have all of these people, oh, why isn't the patch here yet? What's going on? And it's, one or two or maybe three people actually working on it. So, volunteer where you can and take what you can get. It's an 8-year-old game. It's still running. It's still playable. Let's be happy for what we have. And then the last thing is the I just drew a complete and total mental blank. Yay for Brink. 16 minutes into the video, and there's no cast in front of me to stimulate conversation. This is what happens when you try to carry a monologue thread for an extended period of time. It's actually a lot harder than it looks. Okay, so this would be about the threatened bans over glitching the game. And a lot of them are unquestionably glitches. So you've got, terraforming with land factories. You've got specific kinds of blocking with certain structures and that kind of thing. And you can read the forum thread if you want to learn more about it. It's in any of the sub forums as a sticky. It's the current rules of play or whatever it's called. But there's a couple of things that are raising a lot of eyebrows for why they're included. And one is a specific inclusion, and one is a specific thing that is not included in that list. Hover bombing and factories under drops. And I had a talk with Gorton and with Legion about this. And I talked to a few members of the community kind of just to get a better grasp of it, because I'd like to say things when I'm informed. And even though I feel like I'm relatively well informed on the thing, don't jump to a bunch of conclusions just based on this one person talking. But basically what it boils down to is the hover bomb is not included in the glitch list because it is to a certain degree counterable. And for a better player who knows what he's doing, going first bomber and trying to hover bomb will actually cause you to fail, because you're not going to get your value out of it because people know how to respond to it. And then also, it is something that is not specifically breaking a game mechanic. You can click under any air unit and force it into a stall. The movement pattern is the same for all units. You're using the existing pathfinding, and that just so happens to let you quadruple the damage that a bomber does. That's actually on the balance side, because Zoc is working on a fix to, one, make bombers more picky, so they're much harder to hover micro, and two, work out a way to more evenly distribute the amount of damage that it does. So that would be an example of, and you can hear this in the podcast. This is what I got out of it. When bombers are bombing, they go in this big randomized loop for how they pathfind for targeting. He's going to tighten the loop. So instead of the bomber going way out here and looping back and way out here and looping back, it's going to run much more tight little bombing patterns. So that means the DPS is going to go up for an unmicroed bomber, because it's going to be dropping, 30% or so more bombs because it's not traveling as far. It's also going to increase the survivability of the bomber by the fact that it's not going to be way out to one side and possibly flying over anti-air turrets. It's also going to increase the vulnerability of the bomber because it is on a very, very close, tight circle, which means that anti-air in one spot has a better chance of hitting the bomber. So if you respond with mobile anti-air to that area, the bomber's not going to be able to get 3 more passes as it comes in and out of the view of the anti-air. It's going to maybe get 1 more pass because it's going to be spending most of its time directly over the anti-air. Same for stationary anti-air. So it works out both ways. And then if you have a slight increase in something, I'm just going to throw out reload time here. You can also bring down the potential damage of the hover bombing mechanic. So instead of a quadrupling in damage, you're getting more like a 35-40% bump in damage. And at that point, you have to ask yourself, is it worth my time to micro the bomber to maybe get 40% more damage? And I have a chance of screwing up because hover bombing is hard now because the mechanic is so finicky. And yeah, so your risk and reward is much closer. So it's still going to be a game mechanic, but it's going to work better. That's why that isn't on the glitch list. And then the other thing that is on the glitch list is building a factory under drops. And for those of you who don't know, if you build a factory under a drop while it's coming in, the transport will drop all of the units directly on top of the factory and they all just explode. That's a problem because if you're doing an ACU drop, then your ACU blows up. And that's bad. It's a one-hit KO for absolutely no reason. And it is breaking a game mechanic because the game will not let you place a drop on top of the factory. And even if you do drop on top of a factory, if you drag the move or whatever, the transport does its own pathfinding to find a proper spot to land and drop off the units. So you have to specifically break the pathfinding of the transport to get that to happen and to blow the units up. And I know what the mechanic is. I'm not going to say it here. Once you hit the level of entry where there is no return, the point of no return. That's where I was going with that. Once you hit the point of no return on a drop, there is a way to put a factory under a transport that has gone past the point of no return. And at that point, you basically sit there in horror for 3/4 of a second while your transports unloads onto a building that you have no way of avoiding. And that is the reason that is on the ban list. If you build a factory purposely under a unit dropping from a transport and blow it up, you can be banned for that offense. And it's because it is a broken mechanic that can lead to the death of an ACU and is completely unpreventable for the person who is coming in for the landing. So it's just kind of a dirty way to play. So you know, blocking units with wall sections, doing this, that, and the other thing to disrupt pathfinding, blocking with units, that kind of stuff. Still totally okay. Totally fine. But terraforming, where you break terrain with factories and things being built and that kind of thing to affect unit pathfinding, not so permissible. So anyway, I can understand all of the thought behind it. I think it's a well thought out system, and I don't really have any problem with the way that's being carried out. Oh, the other one is drone, the shoulder drone. It's now a bannable offense to send the ACU shoulder drone out into the map because it cannot be killed by interceptors, and that was the fault of the coders. Actually, they broke something in it. But that is fixed in the beta. So play the beta, because the beta is good. But those fixes will be pushed very, very soon. But anyway, I can understand the reasoning behind all of them, and I think it is a good system. It would be a good idea for you to go look up that list in the forum. There's not a lot on it, and most of it's common sense. But anyway, that's my thoughts on the whole thing. And now we're 26 minutes into a video. Yes, we have reached epic length proportions. This is amazing. So I'm going to get out of here before I waste any more of you guys' time. You are more than welcome to go watch. I will be streaming in just a little while here. Hearthstone, actually. Yes, Hearthstone. We're going to be doing Tavern Brawl. But if you made it all the way through this video, kudos to you. You are an awesome viewer, one of the loyal ones, and I greatly appreciate you watching, as always. And I will see you in the next one.